Welcome to CyberCast. I'm Sarah Seibert, Managing Editor with GovCIO Media and Research, and joining me today is David Travers, Director of the Office of Water Emergency Response and Cybersecurity at EPA. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so welcome back, I should say. But throughout the conversation, we'll dive into some of the evolving threats facing critical infrastructure, specifically the nation's water sector, and the strategies that you're developing to improve resilience and security. So to kick things off, you've been with EPA for nearly 30 years. How have you seen the threat landscape evolve, especially when we've seen emerging technology like artificial intelligence gain momentum? And that's, not only for us, but for adversaries as well.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Sarah. I think what we have observed is cyber attacks against critical infrastructure facilities, including water systems and wastewater systems, which is the focus of our work here at EPA. These attacks have increased several fold over the last few years, both in frequency and in severity. And these attacks can disrupt or even contaminate delivery of safe drinking water and can disrupt the treatment of wastewater. So this increase in severity and frequency of attacks is a trend that we observe across all of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors, energy, communications, healthcare, et cetera. So not just limited to water. In terms of the evolution of the threat, so we see three basic categories of threat. The first, as I'm sure you're aware, is ransomware. It's by far the most common type of or motivation for cyber attacks. It's aimed primarily, as you and your listeners likely know, is aimed primarily at stealing money, right? And these attacks are often perpetrated by criminal networks. And many of these types of attacks are just opportunistic in nature. They're just trying to find a vulnerability, completely agnostic of the type of facility that they're attacking. They don't care whether it's a water system, a hospital, major financial firm, et cetera. They're just interested in obtaining money. The second type of threat that we see is the insider threat. This is the individual who leverages their valid, authorized access to disrupt water services. Oftentimes when they have dismissed from a water or wastewater utility, or in one instance, even after the individual retired. But I will say, Sarah, in terms of the evolution of the threat, the third type of threat, and I would argue the most dangerous to the sector, is the advanced persistent threat in the form of adversarial nation states or affiliates of those states or supporters of such states, which seek to target critical infrastructure and water systems in particular, and not just the IT networks of these systems, but we're seeing an increased focus in accessing and manipulating the operational technology, the OT networks. And the reasons for those attacks lie not in the financial reasons or the disgruntled reasons that we have for the previous two, but more insidious in that they're seeking a tactical advantage, in a geopolitical context, to either thwart U.S. engagement abroad or if an engagement escalates to trigger a disruption of cyber attacks.
What are some of the strategies you're developing at EPA, or how are they evolving, especially when we're seeing more sophisticated targeted attacks? How are you having to change your approach to resilience?
Right. So an effective response to this, as you can imagine, involves more than producing fact sheets, conducting webinars, things that the federal government has honed to a fine art over the years. And how we've evolved is providing direct technical assistance to both water and wastewater utilities and to states. So just for example, at EPA, we conduct cybersecurity assessments at individual water systems to help them identify, vulnerabilities in we really focus on the OT side we do include the IT side insofar as sometimes attacks can start on the IT side, as you know, and migrate laterally over to the OT side. So where there is a connection, we're definitely focused on that. But anyway, we're looking at these vulnerabilities at water systems and providing them with a mitigation plan so that they can eliminate these vulnerabilities. And the agency has conducted about 500 of these assessments. I should have started with the fact that there are about 50,000 what we call community water systems in the United States, and another about 16,000 publicly owned treatment works or wastewater systems. So it's a very large and diverse sector, and most of our systems are smaller water systems. So bear in mind, this is important because those smaller systems may lack the technical resources and wherewithal to really implement and design a cybersecurity program. So a lot of these systems require assistance, such as technical cyber assessments at their utilities. The other thing I'll mention really briefly, Sarah, is EPA also conducts nationwide cybersecurity vulnerability scanning to identify vulnerable internet-connected devices that are owned by water and wastewater systems. And then we partner with the states and, of course, the systems themselves to eliminate the risk of the attack. So our response has evolved to focus on providing this type of direct technical assistance to water utilities and not relying on kind of a passive uptake of not only EPA tools, but there are other great tools available, like from the American Water Works Association, from CISA over at DHS, and a variety of other sources. And we don't really care which cyber tools and assessments utilities use, as long as they do something to mitigate their assessments.
You just mentioned how you partner with other federal agencies like CISA. I'd like to dive a bit deeper into that. So how is EPA working with CISA, FBI to enhance incident reporting and reduce vulnerabilities?
That's a great question. And I can say with genuine sincerity that the collaborative relationship that EPA enjoys with CISA and the FBI has worked to the benefit of the water sector. Just first, in terms of information sharing about cybersecurity threats, vulnerabilities, mitigation measures, CISA has been a great partner in providing us with timely and as equally important actionable information on cyber incidents in the water sector, so that EPA is able to maintain situational awareness of incidents reported by the water sector. We've also found CISA just an excellent partner in terms of sharing classified information, which helps us to kind of affirm or even revise our cybersecurity work to ensure that we're addressing the latest threats and vulnerabilities. So I mentioned, advanced persistent threat actors. Here we're talking China, Russia, Iran, et cetera. The classified information we receive helps us understand what types of systems are being targeted, what are the TTPs associated, and so forth. We also partner with CISA in distributing cybersecurity alerts to the water sector on a regular basis, alerting them to threats. And again, as importantly, the mitigation measures that they can undertake to mitigate those threats. The final thing I'll say here is CISA also maintains a nationwide network of cybersecurity advisors. Mm-hmm. These have responsibility for certain states, ensuring that those states have the cybersecurity information they need to protect their critical infrastructure. And these advisors have been just critical allies for us in delivering that direct cybersecurity assistance I was talking about earlier to specific water systems. And what's been great is we've leveraged each other's personnel and resources to provide, I think, a more robust level of support to the water sector than if we were operating independently. And by the way, most of what I just said applies to the FBI as well. They have been a great partner for us. And just so you know, Sarah, this may be TMI, but some listeners might be wondering, well, why is EPA engaged in the space in the first place? Aren't you a regulatory body focused on, environmental regulations and so forth, dispersing funds to promote public health and the environment. And just for the benefit of your listeners, by law, each of the nation's 16 critical infrastructure sectors has what's called a sector risk management agency, which is the federal lead responsible for enhancing the security and resilience of that particular critical infrastructure sector. As I said earlier, it's like healthcare, energy, communications, transportation, and EPA for water and wastewater systems. So that's why EPA is engaged in this space by virtue of us being designated as a sector risk management agency.
Not TMI. That's super interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for saying
that. So you mentioned, with your work with CISA and FBI, that incident reporting piece. So as AI automation gain traction, other emerging technologies, does that play a role in either threat identification or reporting incidents out, like automated threat detection and reporting?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence offers, I think, a intriguing opportunity that I think is very nascent in the sector for detecting and responding to cybersecurity threats. It's certainly something that we're investigating at EPA as the sector risk management agency for the water and wastewater systems sector. AI is not yet widely integrated into cybersecurity programs of the water sector because it is, as I said, a relatively new technology. Water systems generally are contending with fairly limited resources, although larger water systems have the capacity to leverage AI, and some of them may be doing so now. So it remains to be seen how the sector will integrate AI into their cybersecurity programs. It's safe to assume, however, that AI will definitely play a role in detecting and preventing emerging threats in the years to come. I will also say, AI could be leveraged as an attack vector as well, in terms of ransomware has becoming increasingly sophisticated and nuanced compared to when we first started seeing major ransomware attacks over a decade ago. But we're really focused on how can we harness AI to protect water systems against this evolving and increasingly sophisticated cyber threats.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I was actually editing a cybersecurity article recently where there was a quote from a subject matter expert that said 24 hours is now a lifetime because of AI.
That sounds right.
Cybersecurity. Yep. So looking ahead, EPA announced a $9 million grant to fund water system resilience. So what are your goals for that funding as that evolves?
So yeah, the purpose of this mid-sized and large drinking water system infrastructure resiliency and sustainability grant program is to increase the resilience of mid-sized and large drinking water systems. By the way, these are systems serving over 10,000 people, to cybersecurity, but also to natural hazards and extreme weather events. So cybersecurity is one of 3 eligible types of projects that utilities come in for funding. It's actually a $9.5 million competitive grant funding, and the agency is hoping to split the funding between systems that serve 10,000 to 100,000 and systems that serve over 100,000 or more. And I believe the agency is targeting about 6 awards. And a project can last anywhere from 1 to 4 years. The grant application process closed in early October, and the agency is targeting spring of 2026 to actually award the grants. And my office is providing technical assistance to the office that's actually running. My office doesn't operate the grant, but we're providing technical assistance given that we have technical proficiency in both cybersecurity and physical security associated with natural disasters, so that we will have an opportunity to review the projects as well. But it attests to the commitment of the agency and this administration in promoting cybersecurity resilience in the water and wastewater systems sector. I'll also add a plug. There is a multi-billion-dollar, both on the drinking water and clean water, wastewater side, multi-billion-dollar loan and grant program called the State Revolving Funds, and cybersecurity projects are eligible for funding over for those monies. And it's the states which administer that money and develop priority areas of investment and identify what they call intended use plans to rank projects as they come in. So through a combination of that and other funding, CISA also has a funding program for state and local governments that supports cybersecurity. So there are several opportunities for water and wastewater systems to harness these funds to increase their cybersecurity posture.
Okay, so we're approaching the end of the year. What are some of the cyber initiatives you'll be focused on throughout 2026?
In the federal government, we talk about fiscal years, which is probably confusing for most people because, in fact, it doesn't make much sense unless you're in the federal government. But for fiscal year 26, which actually began October 1st in 2025 and extends to the end of September in 2026, EPA in the president's budget is requesting $10 million, continuing the funding resource theme from the previous question, for a new competitive water sector cybersecurity grant program. So I mentioned the previous program that you had asked about, Sarah. Cybersecurity was one of three areas that were eligible. This one is devoted specifically to cybersecurity. So this program would provide grants for cybersecurity improvements to drinking water and wastewater systems, and the money would be available to develop and implement programs to proactively mitigate the risk of cyber attacks on drinking water and wastewater systems. So that is one opportunity in the coming year that, if it receives congressional support, we hope to implement. And again, it's an indication of the degree to which the administration and EPA consider cybersecurity to be a priority. We already touched on AI, and we are looking for this coming year to explore how to harness AI for the water sector, in the form of a tool that might enable water sector systems to conduct a comprehensive assessment of its cyber practices, offer utility-specific recommendations for improving cyber defenses, and possibly play an active role, as we talked about earlier, in actually helping utilities detect and thwart attacks. So increasing awareness of the capabilities of AI in the water sector. And then the final thing I'll say, Sarah, is we're looking, I mentioned our proactive vulnerability scanning, where we search the web for devices that could be exploited, that might be unprotected, lacking access controls, even containing perhaps factory default passwords, that sort of thing. Well, we do intend to expand that program. So with that program, we've identified somewhere upwards of 420, 430 vulnerabilities, exposed devices at water and wastewater systems. And we intend to expand that program. So we look at additional types of devices that we know are prevalent within the water sector and that we know might have certain vulnerabilities associated with them. So those are three of several activities that we're looking forward to in FY26 here at EPA for enhancing the cybersecurity posture of water systems.
That's super exciting. I'd love to have you back for a third time on CyberCast to talk about those developments.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, but in the meantime, good luck. I appreciate you joining the show, and it was great to learn more about the initiatives you're working on.
Thank you, Sarah.
CyberCast, along with GovCast and HealthCast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com.